Well, good day, viewers. We're back working on this 2015 Nissan Murano. I did a previous video on it. I'll put a link in the description. One of the problems it had was a P0456, which is a small leak detected in the evap system. Now, as far as I can tell, this vehicle doesn't support bidirectional testing of the evap system, such as purge and seal. I think you can energize the purge solenoid, but that's about it. So we're going to test the evap system today. My smoke machine died, so I borrowed this one. I've got a new one coming. Now this one requires shop air and connection to the vehicle battery. So when you turn it on in the smoke mode, you can see it blows smoke. So I'm going to test it at the canister purge valve. Let's turn the light on here. So there's a green cap here. Remove the cap. Now you'll need a service tool to take the valve core out, and you need to note that it's a left-hand thread. For whatever stupid reason they did that, they put a left-hand thread. So then we'll put this onto the valve core. You could also take the line off here, but I like to do it this way because it tests what if your leak is right here at this fitting here. And then we're going to push this in here like so, and put smoke on. Now this actually shows me that if there's a leak here, it shows you there's a leak. There is flow going on right now. Now when you do the leak test on this, it's straight air, not smoke. So we're going to look for smoke in a few minutes. I'm going to set this up on the hoist. So I've got the smoke machine running and I see evidence of smoke up above here. There it is there. Now where is it coming from actually? Now I'm not sure if this vent solenoid, which is right here, is normally open or normally closed. So I'm going to put power to it because I can't do it with a scan tool. You can see the smoke, but I can't tell where it's coming from. Seems to be on this side here, up above the subframe. Well, we're going to energize the vent solenoid with a couple of jumper wires here and see if the smoke stops. Turn off the machine. So I've got battery power connected to this vent solenoid, as you can see. And you can see or hear the pressure sensor kicking off there, indicating that there was a bulletin about an O-ring leaking in here. So we're going to let it run for a while and see if we see any smoke with the solenoid energized. So on this particular one, it hits about 1 inch of water, which is the outside dimension here. Now if I go and leak test, it is flowing. There is a leak, even though that solenoid is closed. I bet you that solenoid's leaking. Let's take the hose off of it and see if we can see it. This flow gauge indicates the rate of leak here. So this vent solenoid, you can turn it counterclockwise a quarter turn and it just comes out. This is the O-ring they say has a tendency to leak. It's not leaking, but with the solenoid energized, it should be sealed, and it's not. As you can see, it doesn't hold vacuum. If I do this, it holds vacuum. If I cap off, I took the solenoid out of the port here, and if I cap off this opening and this vent hose, the system holds, doesn't show any leaks. So the vent solenoid is not sealing correctly. So we're going to order up a vent solenoid and retest it after. So you can see in smoke test mode with the solenoid de-energized, it leaks like crazy, so it's normally open. And when I close it, it should stop. But it doesn't. So it needs this solenoid. Simple as that. You can see it puffing out, as opposed to when I de-energize it. It leaks like crazy. So that'll cause it to fail an evap test, because the solenoid is supposed to hold pressure or vacuum in the tank. So with that valve capped off, you can see the flow gauge stabilizes at less than a 10 thou leak. That would represent 10 thousandths of an inch, 20 thousandths of an inch, and a 40 thousandths of an inch leak. And that's the different thresholds. This is a very small leak, and this is a small leak. And then anything over that is a gross leak, typically different OBD codes. I really like this smoke machine. The one I've ordered is similar. I made sure it had the pressure gauge and the flow gauge on it as well. The only difference with this one is it uses shop air. I kind of like that because you don't have to listen to the pump running. And if there's any significant leak and you're in a quiet shop, you can actually sometimes hear an air leak. But I've actually ordered the solenoid from the dealer. They had it in stock, believe it or not, and it was half the price of an aftermarket one, believe it or not. So it should be here this afternoon, and we'll put it in and flow test it afterwards. Well, it's interesting, they call it a drain cut valve from Nissan. And like I said, this part was less than half the price of the aftermarket part. Mind you, apparently they don't have any more and don't know when they're getting any more. They just happen to have this one still sitting on the shelf. I probably need one for this Nissan here as well, because it's got the same code. So to install that thing, you simply turn it 90 degrees. There's a little release tab here. You push on to release it and turn it. So it takes 10 seconds to install. I've got a jumper wire connected to this thing so that I'm going to connect to the battery, but we're going to test this to see if it leaks. So I'm going to go here and turn on the smoke machine. And we should see smoke coming out of that thing in a few seconds. There it comes. Then I'm going to connect it to the battery. And the smoke should stop. That's just residual smoke coming out of there. So now we'll use the leak test mode in this thing. And what this does is gradually build up pressure in the system, and this should drop down below 10. And as you can see, it's dropping nicely. Now, depending on the fuel level in the tank, if it's really low on fuel, it'll take a little bit longer to build up this 1 inch of water pressure. As I mentioned earlier, this would be a small leak, this is a very small leak, and this is a pass. In theory, it should go below that 10 if there's no leak in the system. Because it's basically building up pressure in the fuel tank. You can see it. 1 inch of water is like 0.4 psi, 0.3 psi. So you can see we're down to less than 10 thou leak. And of course, if I de-energize this solenoid, I found a connector earlier. You can hear it exhausting the pressure out of the system. So I'm going to clean that connector out and put some dielectric grease on it. And this hose goes off to the vent. I got to keep looking at the camera to make sure I got it on. So I'll put some dielectric grease on here, clear the codes on this thing, and we'll call this one fixed.